Alright, Joe, I'm just gonna shoot this. I've been planning on it for days. You know, I'm gonna take these glasses off. They have the fucking blue glare coming back on. Alright, blind note. I'm just gonna shoot this. I've been trying to do this for days. Let's see if this takes. I'm gonna have to break it up into a couple parts. It might be 3 parts, it might be 6 parts, but this is gonna be gangs. This is all the gangs, a rundown and just a review of all the gangs that I was ever in, all the groups of people that call themselves by a name. I don't know if it's gangs like we're like Crippin' and Blooded and we got our own hand signs and we sell each other guns and shit. It ain't like that. But it was, you know what I mean, just my people is what we called each other growing up. Alright? And so like I said, I'm gonna break this up into a couple parts. It's looking like at least the Ritter gang is probably gonna be part 1. The Cambridge Street Crew will be part 2. The Natty Bow Club part 3. SMB East Pack. I don't know what they want me to call them, but that's what I call them. And then, you know, the other gangs that they broke up into. And then that's like that. Like basically, it's like old school, and then that's the middle school, and then the new school is like the Franklin Street hippies. Then that went into the suspects, and then. Excuse me. And then Bethlehem in like the more recent years since I've been here. So we're gonna start it off with the Ritter gang. Now, when I was born, I've said this on a couple other shows, and I'll keep reiterating it because it's important to me, and I think it explains a lot about me. You know, I was the youngest member of the Ritter gang for a long time. I was the mascot. I was the first child born. A bunch of kids that hung out at the corner of Plymouth Street and Tillman Street on the east side, catty corner from the bar that's known as Mahoney's. It was called Poor Henry's back then. And like that little corner of Ritter, it's all like fenced up and shit now. Dude, they tore Ritter up. Ritter's a travesty. There's nothing but like huts and trailers and shit. But it was a dope park back in the day. And when my dad and all his friends hung on that corner, and for whatever reason, like I guess he had me, and he must have that happened when he was like right after he got out of high school. My mom was still in Deerhoff. But all his friends were the same age, and they all hung at that corner there. And I don't know what, like I guess like he was just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna buy the house where we all hang out at. And like a year or two later, I think I was like 1 or 2 years old when he bought that house. And like since everybody hung across the street, naturally that house turned into the party spot. And I saw way too much as a child. Like the Ritter gang would, and after me, they would all start having children, but somehow I was the first. So I always felt like I was kind of like the last of the old generation and kind of the first of the new generation. So anyway, we'll get into that in a minute. But so the Ritter gang had an old school and a young school as well. Most of when I was with my dad, and I was real young, and I was real little, I was always with the old school. So, and the young school was still too young. They were still kids. They were still like 13, 14 years old, so they couldn't really hang out yet either. But like, my dad's clique, for some reason, my dad grew up over by Moser, right where Carlisle Grill is, like where Queer Aluminum is, like across from the Carlisle Grill. And like a couple of houses up from that, there's like a 3-story brick apartment building. That's where my dad lived. He lived on the first floor. And I lived there from time to time throughout my childhood as well. So that's where my pappy lived, you know what I'm saying? My dad's dad. But anyway, but once, and he had his own clique growing up. I mentioned a couple of days ago that's the Shack. He had a bunch of boys like Pretzel, Burger, and Swampy Marsh, and this dude Lester, and I think the Schmitty's dad. All these dudes that were like his original crew from over that way, over by Moser. But somewhere down the line, right, I think like right when he got out of high school, he started hanging out with guys like the Cooties, Designers, the Laymans, the Staleys, the Birches. I know I'm forgetting them, but the Cheses, there's a couple, the Lubers. I gotta forget the Lazars. Anyway, and that was what became the old Ritter gang. All right, and man, they were crazy. It was wild. What they got away with in the '70s was amazing. Like we get locked up for half to just 90% of the shit they did. But and they're mostly their turf was Ritter, of course. That was like their main hangout. They also did a lot of shit over at Pilgrim. A lot of people are what they called Pilgrim, like our Wesleyan College, like right catty corner from Ritter. There's that big old field, and there's that college, and nobody knows what the fuck it's there for. It's now some sort of charter school, but back in the day, we called it either Wesleyan, and the Ritter gang called it Pilgrim College. I guess that's what its name was originally. So those two places were their turf, and for some reason, the Manor. Once Bill Cootie bought property over there, like I remember being at the Manor a whole lot. So yeah, then the Ritter gang like had like 2 levels of it, and that level down was the younger Ritter gang. Now it's weird because there was a bunch of cutoffs. Like there's big clans. You know what I mean? Like the Cooties, for instance. Bill Cootie, who was the oldest. Wedge Cootie, I think is or Spike or Wedge, and those 3 are in the old Ritter gang. I forget which one, who's older than who. The youngest Cootie is Mike Cootie. He was kind of like the front man of the younger Ritter gang. You know, he definitely was at Ritter the most. I spent a lot of hang time with Mike Cootie years later when I was old enough to go to Ritter by myself, and the young Ritter gang was just always there still. Or like Designers, like John Ziner was in the old Ritter gang. Gene Birch was in the old Ritter gang, but like I remember Tommy and Ronnie like chilling with the young Ritter gang a lot. I could be wrong on. Anyway, like it was like a cutoff point. Dean Lehman chilled with like both crews. He was like a maverick that went back and forth, but I think that might have had to do with the fact that I don't know. No one would tell me anything because I was listening to the kid, but like I think Dean Lehman handled the weed situation, so everybody loved Dean. And Dean, a lot of people don't realize Dean Lehman had a brother that was, you talk about an OG. Charlie Lehman was the OG of the East Side. That dude was crazy gang banging, criminal minded ass, crazy motherfucker from back in the days, man. Even my own family. My dad was in Jesse was in the old school Ritter gang. Kelly France was kind of in the new school Ritter gang. Same thing with even the Fetter girls. You know what I'm saying? Jackie Fetter, a.k.a. Jackie Lehman, was kind of old school Ritter gang. Where Donna Lehman was, a.k.a. Donna Fetter, a.k.a. Donna Lehman, was in the older school Ritter gang. Where Jackie, she rolled with Kelly, and they were in a younger school. You know what I mean? And I literally was like being babysat by these people. Like I was there. I remember this shit. It's still in my mind. Dave Crisco was in the younger Ritter gang, and he was the running back of Deeruff when Andre Reed was on the team and Snizak was on the team, and then when Deeruff was state champions. You know what I mean? We were champs. Deeruff you couldn't fuck with us, man. In football, basketball, wrestling, baseball, everything that mattered, we were badass in, But so that was the Ritter gang. I'm not gonna get into too many Ritter gang stories. I do have some Ritter gang footage that I'm gonna be bringing soon. My dad got a whole bunch of movies remade, and we'll see what I'm gonna try to like film them and post them. But and then I'm gonna get into on this video too. We still got, what are we at, 9 minutes? So yeah. Well, while I'm still on this video, I'm gonna get into my own first. Like when I was still part of the Ritter gang. Really, the Ritter gang had Ritter picnics every year up until I was probably 14 or 15. Like it was right when I became a teenager that the the Ritter gang really fell apart, and everybody went their separate ways, and life went on, la la la. And then I would go on to start my own gangs. But even as a kid, at 8 years old, I was out, meeting kids my own age and starting my own gangs. And the first gang that I ever was in was what I now call the Cambridge Street Crew. They never called themselves that when it happened, but there was a bunch of kids that hung where, like I lived on Piedmont Street, right behind where Mahoney's was, and a lot of people think I lived on Plymouth Street. That was like my backyard, but that wasn't where my address was. My address was on the front of the house, Piedmont Street. And me, us, and the Heffelfingers, the fucking Heffelheimers, my goofy ass neighbors. That's a story in itself, right there. But right where the front of the Heffelfingers house is, all right, there's like a street that kind of comes like not like parallel, adjacent type thing, called Dent Street, and Dent Street goes all the way up to Sherman Street. And right on, I used to take my bike up there on adventures, and I had a friend there that lived there named Danny Miller, and right where Cambridge Street meets Sherman Street, and man, it was just like 80 little boys just riding their bikes around there, and it was a good place to hang out. It was everyone always building ramps and making jumps for their bike and working on their bikes, and fixed a lot of motorhead guys that would go on to be like motorheads. It was like the Holzer clan, Fritzy, Mark and Kelly Holzer lived there. Danny Miller lived there. The Wagners lived there. The Sarubas lived there. And Willie Saruba was my age. Like, there was 4 kids that were the youngest, that were the littlest kids. There was mad older kids. We were the lowest on a totem pole. And they didn't really beat on us. They weren't bullies. It was more about, like, listening to Ace. It was basically, if Puerto Ricans and black people would never have taken over Allentown, and Allentown would have stayed a white city, this is what we all had mullets. We all had shirts that said like Ozzy Osbourne and The Who, and then wore flannel shirts over them and shit like that. Like this is what Aerosmith like was being played. Like this is what I would have become. It would have been basically what Northampton was when we were growing up. Mullets and AC/DC and shit. Like that's basically what the East Side was at this point. We all rode bikes. We thought we were BMXers, and this was when I was from 8 to 10 years old. Now the 4 youngest guys, it was me, Willie Saruba, Danny Miller, and Tony Trenelige. And Willie could beat the shit out of all of us. I couldn't beat up Willie, but I could beat up Danny and Tony. Danny could beat up Tony, and poor Tony couldn't beat up any of the 4 of us. But that was the pecking order. And we would oscillate from like Cambridge Street and Ritter. So we were at Ritter a lot too. So I was, and I'm telling you, Willie Saruba, I think I fought him. I've been in thousands of fights in my life, and at least 1,500 of them had to be against that guy, bro. And he won every time. He would end up moving out of the East Side in like 2nd grade or 3rd grade or something. He was a kind of a sore loss because I think he would have been a dope East Sider. He ended up moving to Whitehall. But, and he was, I guess if you want to classify it, like, as bully, but, like, to me, but, like, I'm not mad about bullying. I think bullying makes you stronger, man. Bullies are good. But anyway, that would go on to be my own personal crew until that fateful day in I guess it was March of 1981, when I got pulled into a teacher's conference room and tested. They got freaking quizzed and grilled, and they asked me a million questions, and I answered them, and the next thing I know, they're like, you're not going to Ritter no more, you're going to Moser. So once I got shipped off to Moser, I kind of lost contact with those dudes, and plus Willie Saruba moved, and Tony and Danny went their separate ways, and that was the end of this Cambridge Street Crew. So that's part 1 of my series of gangs. The next series is going to be the Natty Boat. Next part of the series is going to be the Natty Boat Club and SMB East Pack. So stay tuned. Peace. My name is Romance. World according to Romance. Gangz, yo.